In this video, we are going to talk about the, least common denominator. So, how do we find the least common denominator? Let's start with a simple example first, which is, let's say, if we have 8 and 16, how do we find it? Well, we can start with finding the greatest common factor first, which is 4. After you factor it out, 8 divided by 4, I have a 2 left. 16 divided by 4, I have 4 left. So, and then I multiply all of these elements together. I have 4 times 2 times 4. I got 13.2. Oh, did I get it right? 8 times 4. Which is, yes, 13.2. So that means the least common denominator is going to be 13.2. So we can use the same thing for a variable like 4x squared y to the 5th, and then 6x to the 4th, y3, z to the 6th. To do that, let's start with the coefficients. With coefficient 4 and 6, you might be very quickly to identify 12 is the least common denominator for the coefficient, which is 4 and the 6. Now, when you look at the variable, we just need to pick the highest terms of each variable. Now, we have how many types of variable? We have x, and then we have y, and we have z. For each variable, we pick the highest term. So for x, the highest term we have is 4. Oh, sorry. So that means I have x to the 4th in here. For y, the highest term I have 5 and 3. The highest exponent is 5. For z, the highest exponent is 6. So that means our solution is 12 times x to the 4th, y to the 5th, and z to the 6th. Now, what about you have a polynomial? How do I find the least common denominator of x squared plus 2x minus 3 and x squared minus x minus 12? So this is similar on what we trying to do earlier. The first thing you want to do is to factor each polynomial. You always start with factoring, because with factoring, you know how many factors do they have. Then you can find, hey, what do they have in common? And then we just need to multiply all the unique factors. Okay, now, for the first one, use AC method. I have x plus 3 times x minus 1. And then for the second one, I have x minus 4 times x plus 3. So for these two, we will write down the common factor like what we do. So what they have in common, we write it down. They have x plus 3 in common, so that means the least common factor is going to contain that. And then we just need to multiply the unique factors, which is x minus 1 and then x minus 4. So this product is going to be the least common denominator of these two polynomials. Okay, let's do another exercise, such as find the least common denominator of x squared minus 10x plus 25 and x squared minus 14x plus 45. Again, you always start with factoring. When you factor in the first one, you will have, using AC method, x minus 5 times x minus 5. The second one, AC method, I have x minus 5 times x minus 9. Okay, now the common thing we just need to write down once. We have x minus 5. They both have contain one x minus 5. And then the unique ones, I have x minus 5, another x minus 5, and x minus 9. Alright, so that means we write down what do they have in common, which is x minus 5. We leave it there. And then write down the unique factor, which is x minus 5, and then x minus 9. So this is our solution for the questions. Okay, so now when it comes to factor, we can do the same thing. First of all, think about this one. If I have a 5a and then 3a squared over b, how can I write these as 6a to the 5th and b to the 3rd? So we need to identify what factor we need to match the denominator. So coefficient. For coefficient, we need a 2, right? Okay, because 3 times 2 equals 6. And then we have a squared. But here you have a to the cube. That means we need one more a. We need to multiply a to match that. Another one is we have just single term b and b to the cube. That means we're missing b to the cube. So that means in order to match the denominator, the top needs to be 5a multiplied 2a b to the cube. This is very similar to I have 1/2. So on the top, this should equal to what? Well, you will see what factor do they missing, which is they missing 2. So that means you want the numerator times the missing factor, which is 2, to match it. So you have a 2/4. So this is similar. You use the numerator, multiply the missing factor, which is 2ab to the cube. So that means our 5a over 3a squared b is equivalent to 10a squared b to the cube over 6a to the cube b to the cube. Alright, now next one, if I have x minus 2 over x plus 4, now they have a denominator x squared plus 7x plus 12 over what things? So now, the first step, again, if you see something like that with 3 terms, you want to start with factoring. Because if you factor, you will identify the factor that we need to match the denominator. So what factor do they have? Using AC method, we have x plus 4 times x plus 3. Now, for the first fraction, you already have x plus 4. So that means in order to match the numerator, you need a x plus 3. So that means I want x minus 2 times x plus 3. So you will get the fraction. You can FOIL it to find the answer, or you can just leave it as is. When you FOIL it, you should get x squared plus x minus 6 over x plus 4 over x plus 3. You can also leave it as this fraction. I'm okay with both during your test. Okay, so now let's start building up each fraction. So they will have their common denominator. So, for example, I have 2 fractions, 5a over 4b cubed c and 3c 6a squared b. Now, we need to identify the least common denominator. So, we have 4bc and 6a squared b. Let me write on the side. Okay, so now we can take a look. What do they have in common? You can consider this as a division. For the letters, which is the coefficient, they have in common 2. So that means they have what? 2 left. If we divide it by 2, you will still have 3 left, sorry. And then you have b cubed, c, a squared, and b. Now, the variables. The variables is you can either find the common factor variable. When it comes to a, you don't have any common. So that means we keep it down. Or you can just go ahead and skip the a. And now we have b. They only have one b. When you divide it by b, you have b squared, c, and 3a squared, and just b. And c, as you can see, only one terms they have a c. The second one, they don't have a c. So we don't need to write it, or you can just do divided by 1. Okay, so now let's take a look. This part is the part that they have in common. This part is the unit part for each term. So that means the least common denominator is going to be everything in here multiply. So I have 2 times b times 2b squared c times 3a squared. Together I have 4 times 3, 12, b to the third, c, and a squared. That's how you can find the common denominator. Or you can use the way that we talked about earlier, which is you got 4bc and 6a squared b. You look at the coefficient first. For the coefficient, it's very easy for us. We can notice that, okay, 12 is the least common denominator for 4 and 6. And then we look at each numbers. And then for a, we have a squared. And then the highest exponent for b is b to the cube. The highest exponent for c is just c with 1 power. So you will end up to have the same answer as we did for the previous method. You can use either one. Okay, so now we found the least common denominator is 12 a squared b cubed c. And now you need to take a look. In order to attain the least common denominator, what does this part missing? Well, if you think about my method that I introduced the first time, when you divided, factoring the first term, 4b cubed c, this is element that the first term has, right? And then you got the common denominator, which means you're missing this term, because this term is come from the second element. It's the unique factor from the second term or the second polynomial. So that means you need to multiply 3a squared to attain that. Or you can just calculate by yourself. From 12a squared b cubed c, what do you miss? So I have 5a, sorry. I need to multiply 3a squared. Let me show you more steps. For more steps, probably you can think about, okay, bottom I have 4b cubed. I need to multiply 3a squared so that I will get the common denominator 12b cubed c a squared. On the top, if you multiply 3a squared, that means you need to multiply 3a squared as well. Okay, for the second fraction, we do the same thing. For the second fraction, we have 6a squared b, 3c. So what do they missing? For the second square, you have this element is what they have in common, right? And the unique element the first fraction has is 2bc squared. So that means I need to multiply 2b squared c on the top and bottom to attain the common denominator. If you feel like the first method I use is too complicated, you can just do it by yourself, calculate it. It's relatively easier. All right, so on the top, I have 15a cubed over 12a squared b cubed c, and the second fraction I got 6b squared c squared over 12a squared b cubed and c. Now they can do the operations such as subtraction, addition. This is very important. We learned that because we want to do more operation with the fractions. Okay, so now what about fractions? Think about how do we find the least common factor for fractions. So, for example, you have 5x squared minus 5x minus 6, and another fraction is x minus 2, x squared plus 4x plus 3. So the first step is you always want to factor the denominator. Oops, I spelled it wrong. You always want to do that first. So for the first one, I have x minus 6 times x plus 1. The second one, I have x plus 1, x minus plus 3. Now, for these two factors, after I factor it, find the unit pieces. The unit pieces is going to be 6 minus 6, x minus 6, and then x plus 3. The common pieces, we have x plus 1 and x plus 1. So that means the common factor, the least common factor, is going to be x plus 1. They already repeated, so we don't need to multiply again. And multiply all of the unique pieces, which is x minus 6 and x plus 3. So this is more straightforward. When you try to attain the least common denominator for each fraction, you just need to multiply what do they missing. Like 5x over x minus 6 and then x plus 1. The common denominator is this one, so you're missing x plus 3. So I need to multiply x plus 3 on the top and bottom. Similarly, for the second fraction, I have x plus 1, x plus 3. So the pieces I mix is x minus 6. Once I multiply this part, then you will have a common denominator. After you multiply it, you can either simplify it by distributing the 5x inside. In here, you will have a FOIL operation, or you can just leave it as is. Okay, so that's it for finding the least common denominator. Let me know if you have more questions.